Hey guys! So with fall officially upon us, I am going to be sharing 10 throwback eyeshadow palettes that I am excited to reach for this fall. I have so many palettes in my collection that kind of fit into the fall aesthetic, but I narrowed it down to 10, which is still almost half of my collection, but I guess that just goes to show what kind of colors I like. But in order to be included in this video, the palette had to have launched in 2021 or earlier. So none of these palettes launched this year, as far as I know. I don't think any of these launched in 2022, so they're all older by the makeup industry standards. Many of these are very old, like some of these I've had in my collection for 4-ish years. So really the point of this video is to encourage you to shop your own stash and find those fall palettes that really inspire you. They don't have to be these specific ones. Also, at the end of this video, I am going to do a look with one of these palettes, and I randomly selected the palette and then did kind of a palette bingo style look with it. So stay tuned till the end so you can see which palette it was and the look that I got today. Let's start with one that I think is so underrated. This is from Estate Cosmetics, and it is their Mystic Forest palette. Of all the palettes in my collection, this one is the most quintessential grungy fall palette that I own. I just love this palette, and it's funny because these kinds of tones, like the mustardy colors, the olivey colors, I don't usually go for those types of tones on my eyes, but something about this palette and the way it's presented, the way that it's laid out, the packaging, all of it, along with the performance of the shadows, which is amazing. I just think this palette is brilliant. The mattes in here are all just like super soft and blendable, but they don't have a ton of kick up either. And then really where this palette shines is these two shimmers here, Mystic Forest and Fairy Dust. These are both, they feel like ColourPop Super Shock shadows. And let me just show you those up close. Oh, I mean, especially this one right here. That is my favorite shade in this palette. I feel like these are the two shades that really make this palette something special. My only complaint with these two shades, and I've said it before, but they do crease a little bit on my eyes, which, you know, it's kind of annoying, but I have found that just setting my whole lid with powder before I apply those does reduce the creasing quite a bit. I don't normally do that, but with these two shimmers I do, and it does help keep them from creasing. So to me, I think they're so beautiful that it's like I can overlook that small gripe because everything else about this palette I love. And Estate is kind of a smaller indie brand based in Canada, so if you're interested in checking out this brand, this palette I think is one of their best products that I've tried. I also liked their Hidden Garden palette, which launched at the same time, but I didn't end up keeping it just because I felt like the colors were kind of repetitive compared to what I already had in my collection, but this one is so unique, and the packaging is also just so pretty. I want to have it on display. Like, I want like a print of this pattern somewhere because it is gorgeous with the snakes and the flowers, the moths. It's just I love it. The next palette is a total throwback drugstore palette that I've had in my collection for a very long time. It is the e.l.f. Earth and Ocean palette, and to me this palette, it could be worn in any season. I mean, same goes for any of these palettes, but with a lot of these like brighter blues, I kind of think of spring and summer. But over here on this side, it has so many beautiful earthy tones, and I do think the fall is a great time to play with like mossy browns, taupes, greens, and yellows, which is really what this side of the palette is all about. So I think this palette came out in 2019, so it is definitely a throwback for sure, and I've been talking about it and raving about it ever since then. If you are into these colors, I don't think you'll be disappointed. The quality of this is just top notch. The only thing I'll say is I do think these two light blues down here, you do kind of have to build them up a little bit, but they are definitely workable. They do show up, but those are the only two shades in here that feel drugstore to me. And I think for 14 bucks, this is a total steal. But I also wanted to say I'm going to be doing a live palette bingo with this for my channel members and patrons. So if you are interested, that is going to be this Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. So if you want to join, you can either join the YouTube membership or the Patreon. They're both the same. I just have both so that if one is more convenient for you than the other, you can just take your pick. So if you're interested, I'll have my Patreon linked below, and to join the channel, you can just click the join button somewhere near the subscribe button, and that'll get you set up. So would love to have you over there, but if not, I have done several looks with this on my channel already, so I'll link those below as well if you want some inspo with this. And same goes for any of these palettes. If I've done a look with them on my channel before, I'll link that with the palette where I list them under like the products section of my description box. This might be a little obnoxious of me, but I do have all 4 of my ABH palettes included in this video. All 4 of these would definitely be considered throwback palettes. I've had all of them for at least 2 years now, I think, so they're on the older side, and I know a lot of you probably have at least one of these in your collection. All of these palettes are just fantastic fall palettes, so of course I had to include my Norvina palette. This is also my pan that palette for the year. Obviously, I have quite a ways to go before I hit pan on all of these shades, but trying to hit pan on as many shades as I can before the end of the year, and then I might actually just keep this as my pan that palette next year, we'll see. But this is one of my all-time favorite palettes. Really, the shimmers in here are my favorite part of it, but the mattes complement the shimmers so well. And even though at first glance I do kind of think of spring when I see this palette, just with like the light pinks and the purples, kind of makes me think of spring, but really this makes a great fall palette too, especially kind of in this region. Down here we have this like mustardy color, the burgundy, just lots of great fall tones in here. And I did do a 1 month 1 palette with this last year, I think last fall it was, so I will leave that linked below. I think there were like 20 plus looks featured in that video, so if you have this and you're looking for inspiration, that is a good video to check out. The next palette is my Sultry palette. This one often makes me think of the holidays especially, but I was looking more closely at these colors and a lot of these do make me think of the fall, especially these kind of taupey shimmers like Ember, Teak, and Cinder. All 3 of those are great for like a more glam fall look, and a lot of the matte colors also are kind of fall-ish to me, like Birch here, Twig, Dystopian. I think this makes a beautiful fall palette. Honestly, weirdly enough, of all of my Anastasia palettes, this one is my least used. Like, it has the fewest dips in it, and I haven't hit any pans in this one, whereas I have hit pan in all my others. Part of that is because I have had this for less time than the other 3 palettes. I think I bought this in December of 2020, so it isn't as old, but I really want to give this some more love as we get into the fall and then into the holiday season. I do plan to have this be my next 1 week 1 palette. Even though you can't get it anymore, I know so many people do own this that hopefully it would give you some inspiration to pull it out. And also, I just want to challenge myself to do 7 different looks with it, just so that I can get to know this palette a little bit better, because I feel like I just haven't used it enough for how long I've had it. So that one is one I'm really excited to use this fall. Next we have Soft Glam, an old classic. I don't really reach for this much outside of the fall season for some reason. I really should, but I don't know, there's just something about it that just feels very cozy and warm and fall-y to me, especially with all the warm browns and this mulberry shade. I also did a 1 week 1 palette with this one last fall, and I loved all the looks that I got with it, and it really did like re-inspire me to use this palette. I thought about decluttering this recently along with Subculture, but I ended up keeping them just because I thought, let's just keep them for 1 more fall and see if I don't like fall in love with them again, because I very well might. So that brings me to Subculture. This is the last of my 4 ABH palettes in this video, but this one is very colorful yet grungy, lots of fall tones in here as well. I just think this color story is so much fun, especially for the fall. I also think it makes a great spring palette with these brighter colors down here. Kind of this quad right here is really fun in the spring, but I love especially like the teal greens in here, Axis and Untamed. Those 2 teals are some of my favorite shades in this palette, and I like to pair those actually with the shade Roxy, the peach. Something about the way that those 2 colors balance each other out is just so fun and unique. This also has some kind of mustardy colors, some deep purples and maroons. Yeah, just a lot going on in here. This is really the kind of palette that I take my time with, just because the shades are very like rich, and some of them you kind of have to be careful not to blend them together because they can turn like brown when they're mixed together, since there's just a lot of complementary colors in here. But when I do take my time with this, I usually love the result. And it's just a lot of fun for like a makeup nerd. This one is unfortunately discontinued as well. Alright, next up we have a drugstore palette, a classic. This has been a favorite of mine for a while. This is the Profusion Mauves palette. I love berry tones in the fall. Really, I think of late fall into the holidays when I think of berry tones. Just, I guess I think of like Thanksgiving, cranberry sauce, but to me that still totally counts as fall. I just love this palette and I love any excuse to shout it out. $5. They might have raised the price to $6, but I mean still. For me, Profusion palettes have been hit or miss, but this one is so good. The shimmers in here are just out of this world. You can see I've already hit pan on Opal. This makes a great highlighter as well for your cheeks. I mean, they are so just reflective. And to me, like to the touch, these feel high-end. Like they have that sort of creaminess to them. The mattes in here also work really well. I would say the shade Ballad is a little bit sheer. Like I could use a little bit more pigmentation from that one, but it also is very usable. Like you might just have to build up 2 layers instead of 1, but I feel like for a $5 palette, I'm not really complaining. Also, as you can see, the packaging does get scratched up very easily, but I'm not really complaining for $5. I also really like that for a monochrome palette, none of the shades feel repetitive. Like every shade is different from the others. So even though it is all in the same color family, there's a lot of different looks you can get with this. Just because there's so much range between like this deepest red and the lighter tones, there's just a lot of variety packed into this little palette. All right, let's throw it back to another palette that is unfortunately discontinued, but if you have this one in your collection, you gotta dust it off. This is another one that I think of as a fall and holiday palette kind of in one. It is the Urban Decay Stoned Vibes palette. I currently have this in my everyday makeup drawer because I think this has so many tones great for fall. I love the greens. This shade Bloodstone is a great kind of grungy fall shade. That shade has a reddish brown base and an olive green shift. Stunning. But then for a more toned down fall look, I love Tiger's Eye, Meditate, sorry. And then this plummy purple is also perfect for the fall. So I did a look with this in my most recent everyday makeup drawer video. If you have this palette, even though it is a couple years old at this point, I think it is a great one to pull out for the fall. A similar sort of formula from Flower Beauty that I had to include. This one isn't as much of a throwback, at least not for me because I did buy it this year, but it came out in 2021, I'm pretty sure, and I think it came out in the earlier part of 2021. So I think it does count as an older palette in the community here. So this is the Flower Desert Lights palette. I have been talking this to death all year. I just think, I mean, really this is a great year-round palette, but I especially think it's perfect for the fall. This deep reddish brown makes a great like outer corner shade. Or if you have a deeper skin tone than me, you could wear this all over, I mean, you can wear this all over your lid even if you are fair like me, but I don't usually like to put shades this deep all over, but in the outer part of the lid or just as a liner, that totally just gives me fall vibes. And then I also love this more like taupey rose gold color here. That's the shade Horizon. Beautiful fall shade. And this one down here called Red Rocks is also beautiful. It has a little bit of like a plummy hue to it, so it makes it great for this season. I think this palette is useful year round. I mean, I used it for like a summer wedding look. I used it back in the spring, but for the fall and even into the holidays, these shades are perfect. There's those 3 shades. I mean, those 3 shades together would make a perfect fall look. And you might be thinking, because this is an all shimmer palette, that you might need to pull in some mattes, which you can if you want to, but I also think you can get a complete look with just these shades if you don't mind a little bit of shimmer in your crease, which I don't. They all work great for one shadow looks, like just pop a little bit of one of those shimmers on and then just blend it out with a crease brush, and no one's gonna know that you didn't use a matte in your crease. So I don't really think you're missing anything, even if you're just using these shades on their own. Finally, palette number 10 is another one that is actually quite new to my collection. I recently got it as a gift with purchase, but it's been out for quite some time, and I know a lot of people do have this one. This is the e.l.f. Bite-Sized Quad in Cream and Sugar. I didn't have the best luck with Rose Water. I liked it for a while, but I felt like it went bad. Right around the 1 year mark, the shades just kind of stopped showing up, and I also had to repress them like twice because they just kept crumbling. So I'm hoping I have a different experience with this one, we'll see. I decided to go ahead and get it as a gift with purchase just so that I could like test out another one of the shades. And so far, I have really enjoyed these shades. I don't think I've used this more bronzy shimmer yet. I need to do a look soon with just this quad on its own. Maybe I'll film it as an Instagram reel, but I think this is going to make a great everyday, just quick fall palette if I don't want to do anything too complicated. I love that I can just kind of pop either of those shimmers on my lid, deepen up my crease and outer corner with the brown, and then I can blend everything out with this matte light beige color. So I'm excited about this. The quality does feel really nice, especially for a $3 quad, but again, I will have to keep you guys updated on whether or not this holds up long term, just in terms of like the performance. But it does have a shelf life, according to the label here, of 12 months. Which most things do, I think. Like, let me see. I mean, the Flower Desert Lights has a shelf life of 6 months, but I've had it longer than 6 months and it's still fine. I don't usually like follow those too closely. As long as things don't smell or irritate my skin, I usually assume that they're fine to keep using, but we'll see how well this holds up. But I did get some comments from some of you who have this and said that you love it and use it all the time. So if you have this one, definitely pull it out for the fall. I think it's going to be a great, just everyday wearable sort of color story. So those are the 10 palettes from my collection that I am most excited to reach for this fall. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the look that I created today. And you'll get to see which palette I used and the shades I used. So let's go ahead and get into that now. Okay, so I'm really excited to do a look with one of these palettes. What I want to do is randomly select one of them. So I have all 10 of these palettes stacked together like this, so I'm just going to number them from the bottom to the top. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to pull up my Pretty Random app, numbers 1 through 10. We got 5. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is ABH Soft Glam. And I honestly don't use this palette a whole lot outside of the fall season. At least recently I haven't been, but I'm excited to dust this off. I'm gonna do this palette bingo style because I'm always getting requests to do palette bingo, so I like to try to sneak them in. I'm actually gonna plan to pick 4 shades, and then if I feel like I want another shade, I'll roll in a 5th, but I'm just gonna number it horizontally, so we have 1 through 7 on the top and 8 through 14 on the bottom. All right, so we got 8, 9, 1, and 6. So 8 is one of my favorite shades in the palette, Dusty Rose. I love cool kind of mauve-y lavenders like this. They're some of my favorites to wear in the crease. That is Dusty Rose, gorgeous. And then shade number 9, of course, is the next one over, which is Fairy. That's kind of the more yellowy of the 2 light champagne shimmers here. I think those 2 shades together, like, by themselves would make a gorgeous look. And then shade number 1 is this matte cream color, Tempera, which is super useful. Obviously isn't going to impact the look a whole lot, but it's a good one. I use it pretty much every time I open up this palette, whether it's to set my eyeshadow primer or to highlight my brow bone, to highlight my inner corner. And then the 4th shade we got was shade number 6, which is Bronze, which is a really nice, more like an antique gold kind of color. And this is a more kind of foiled metallic shimmer as opposed to the softer champagnes in here. So those are the 4 shades I rolled. I'm gonna go ahead and roll in a 5th shade since one of the shades we got is just a matte cream color. I feel like we should roll in one more. So we got 12. That is this matte brown here called Rustic. Okay, that'll be nice to kind of deepen up the look a little bit. So there's Rustic there. All right, so let's get started with the look. I am going to go ahead and start out with the shade Tempera, and I'm just gonna use this to set my eyelid primer from the crease up. I'm not putting any on my lid because I like to leave my lid tacky. But what I'm gonna do next is start building up my crease shade, and I'm gonna use Rustic as my main crease shade. I'm actually gonna start with this shade, but I'm gonna mix it with a little bit of Tempera to lighten it a little bit so that it'll act more like a transition color. I'm mainly focusing this on the outside half of my crease, and then I'm buffing it upwards. So now I'm gonna take a different crease brush, a slightly more tapered one that comes to more of a point. I'm gonna pick up more of Rustic just on its own, not mixing it with Tempera, and I'm gonna use that to just deepen up kind of the outer corner of my eye and then blending that upwards as well. Kind of taking whatever's left on my brush down to the lower lash line. Then using a smaller crease brush, I'm going to go into Dusty Rose, and I am kind of focusing this more on the inner half of my crease. And then I'm blending it outward to meet with the brown. So I'm going to use the bronze shade as my main lid color, just because I want it to pop as much as possible. I'm going to go in with my NYX Glitter Primer first. My fingernail is stained with blueberry juice, by the way. I know it looks weird. All right, and then I'm just going to tap bronze all over the lid. This is a kind of one of their like thicker metallic shades, so I really just like to slowly build these up. I don't want to get too much because then it might result in some fallout. It's funny, I feel like I don't use this bronze shade very much when I use this palette. I don't know why, it is really pretty. It's just, I guess it's like a little bit more of like a yellowy gold than what I typically go for, but I think this is really pretty, especially in the fall. So then for the shade Fairy, that's the last shade that I haven't yet used. I'm just going to pick up some of that on my pinky and tap it into my inner corner. And I am also going to just pull up any excess onto my lid. Then I'm going to go back into Tempera again. Highlighting the brow bone, this also serves to just kind of clean up the edge of the crease. Also taking a little bit out here. And a teeny bit on the bottom part of my inner corner, so that I don't like to have too much shimmer like anywhere below my lower lash line. So this kind of just helps blur any shimmer that did get down there. Taking the first crease brush one last time and just blending over those edges. Finally, I'm going to take a little bit of Rustic on a smudge brush and softly smudge that along my lower lash line. Alright guys, so that is the finished look with Soft Glam. I had a lot of fun playing with this palette, especially because it's been a while since I've used it. Definitely hoping to use this a lot more throughout the fall. I love how this look turned out. The lip I'm wearing, ended up pairing it with a combo of the Mented Peach lip pencil and the Urban Decay Vice lipstick in Liar. I love this combo, and that is it. So thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the palettes that I am looking forward to using throughout the fall season. I hope it encouraged you to shop your stash and pick out those really fall-inspired palettes, whether you have any of these or if you don't have any of these, I'm sure you can find some of your own. And if you are interested in checking out my YouTube membership or my Patreon, again, I do have an upcoming live palette bingo with the Elf, Earth, and Ocean palette, so I'd love to see you over there as well. Otherwise, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, and I will talk to you again very soon in my next video. Bye!